My name is Julie Whitaker. The title of my book is A Farewell Party to My Boobs. It's about a woman who throws a farewell party to celebrate the life of her breasts before having them removed. So I decided to have a going away party. One day I was sitting on my couch, and it was a weekend, and I had my dog next to me, and I had my laptop out, and I started to make a flyer for the going away party. And at the top, it read, "Please come to the party, the going away party." And underneath the invitation was an image that I found on the internet that was a picture of two cakes sitting next to each other with white frosting on the top and a couple of pink candies in the middle placed next to each other so that they look like breasts. And underneath that was kind of a poem that I wrote for myself, to myself, to my own breasts. And the first line, here's the flyer. The first line was, "They did really good work. They fed 2 babies. They had their fun. They made us all laugh. They tried really hard to fill up an A cup. They are well loved. They will not be forgotten." So I sent this out and passed it around to family and friends and coworkers, some neighbors, people I thought kind of knew what was going on with me, people I wanted to tell. And the idea was that I was going to throw a party to celebrate the breasts that were going to be removed in a couple of days. So backing up, the reason I had to have my breasts removed is because about a year prior to the party, which was just about 7 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with a genetic mutation called BRCA2, which, so I didn't have cancer, but I had a very high likelihood of getting it over the course of my life, up to a 90% chance of getting breast cancer and a 30% chance of ovarian cancer. So I'm extremely risk averse. I do not want to take chances, and the idea of cancer really scared me. So there was a no-brainer for me. As soon as I found out I had this genetic mutation and the odds were really against me, I knew right away the body parts were coming out of me. I didn't want to take the chance. So so the question was, over time I started having to wrestle with the question of, well, who do I tell about this? Like, who gets to know this information? I have a full-time job, I have a family, I have a pretty full life, and so things were going to have to slow down for me and change. And from the very beginning, I kind of decided that I wanted this to be public. I didn't want to hold it as a private, isolated kind of story. And so I immediately just started telling people. I didn't isolate myself. And so I started off being pretty open about it. And, my husband asked me, can I tell people at work? Is it okay? Because he was going to doctor's appointments with me, and he was going to be there for me at the surgery and afterwards. And so he was going to be taking some time off work. I said, is it okay if I tell my coworkers? And I said, yeah, that's fine. The more people that know, the better, actually. And I was thinking that it used to be the case that, like in the 40s and 50s and 60s, women had breast cancer. They didn't even talk about it. It was a very private kind of affair. And even today, people talk about it, but they don't talk about mastectomies. It's not a conversation for private, for mixed company. So I decided that I didn't like that. I don't like that people have to share their miseries alone. So that was part of my thinking. But also because I was really scared to have this surgery. So I thought the more people who know, then the more real this is going to be for me. So that was part of my thinking. So 6 months after I was diagnosed with this genetic mutation, I had my ovaries and fallopian tubes removed. And that was kind of a big thing, but it was, outpatient surgery. I was under anesthesia, but it was a smaller deal. A couple weeks later, I was completely fine. But this was going to be a bigger surgery. It was a major surgery. And so I had lots of time to think about it because I knew about it a year before, and I had to wait like a whole year almost before I had the surgery. So I kind of started thinking of it like I had climbed up the ladder to a high dive, and I was slowly making my way out to the end of the high dive, and eventually I was going to have to jump. And so it was this slow process of like anticipating this massive surgery. And so, I had these visions in my mind of what the surgery was going to look like. And I knew I was going to be under anesthesia. I didn't know who was going to be in the room. I had this idea that it would be, all these medical students and residents and fellows and the surgeon and just this whole room full of people. I have no idea. And that my arms were going to be splayed out and my breasts were going to be visible. And literally going to have my breast tissue removed from my pectoral muscles and cut away. And so, the more I thought about that and envisioned it, the scarier it was. And so I had many months to be kind of scared shitless about having my breast removed. And so part of what I found pleasure in and kind of a release in was kind of making it into a little bit of a more light topic. And so that led me to do something crazy, like have a going away party for my boobs. One particular experience I had at work, I work at a small college, I'm a faculty member there. And I was meeting with a coworker, and he and I were talking about how I really had to work hard this semester to get a lot of work done, because next semester I was planning to take some time off. And I said, I'm really going to have to work my ass off to get this thing done. And he said, well, maybe you should keep your ass, given that you're going to have all these other body parts removed. And at the time, it was so funny. I mean, we cracked up laughing. It was really funny. And the next morning, I got a voicemail from him. And he said, oh my God, Julie, I woke up at 2:00 in the morning thinking about what I said to you. And I thought, that was really inappropriate. I'm really sorry I said that. I don't know what came over me. And I thought, what? I thought it was hilarious. To me, that was exactly what I needed, was that kind of a, like, don't take yourself and your life so seriously. Put things in perspective. We're all going to die. We're all going to lose things in our life or have disabilities at some point. I mean, people have lots of tragedies that happen to them. And so it helped me actually to not take the whole situation so seriously. And it was good. It was a really good thing. So the other part of my journey has been thinking about whether or not I wanted to do reconstruction. So when I was meeting with surgeons and planning for this surgery, one of the automatic things that they do for women who have breast cancer or who are preventing breast cancer is to meet with the plastic surgeon, because the assumption is that you're going to have reconstruction. And even the idea, like the name reconstruction, it sounds like, it sounds kind of good and kind of wholesome or something. But it's really, I came to learn that it's kind of a misnomer. So I met with a plastic surgeon, and I'm wearing this gown, and we're talking through, what that would look like, what reconstruction involves. And he asked me to take my gown off, and he looked at my breasts, and he said, no big deal. Yeah, not a problem at all. This will be easy. No big deal. And then he kind of said as an aside, and if you want to have, larger breasts, if you want to have like an enhancement, then you can. We can make whatever size you want, we'll be fine. And so I was kind of led to believe that this was kind of like a boob job or an enhancement. Like, this will be better for you. You can actually have larger breasts. And it didn't take long before I started to rethink that idea, because the explanation that he gave and that I later researched was that when you have a breast enhancement, when you go in and you say, I want a boob job, what they do is they put silicone on top of your breast tissue. But if you have breast cancer, or if you have your breast removed for preventive reasons like I did, they actually don't have any place to put the silicone because you don't have any breasts. So what they have to do is they have to take your pectoral muscles and slowly stretch them away from your rib cage. So they make a pocket underneath your pectoral muscle to stick some silicone. And I started thinking of this like a mutation, or not a mutation, but a mutilation of my body. And then I started asking myself questions like, will I be able to use my pectoral muscles? You know, I'm a really active person. I do yoga, I cross-country ski, I dance, I bike, I walk. And all of those things started feeling like they might be in jeopardy if I did this surgery. Then I started looking into things like, what's in silicone? You know, what's the chemical makeup of this foreign body that's going to be inside my body for the rest of my life? And I wasn't convinced that they're completely safe. They can leak. They can, you know, parts of the silicone can end up inside of your blood system and your blood and within your body. And I wasn't convinced that I wanted that there. So as I was starting to rethink the notion of reconstruction, whether I really wanted to do that or not, I was also kind of searching for role models and other women who've gone through the same thing as me, and I just was having a hard time finding that. I found a woman who lives in Milwaukee who had the same thing as me, BRCA mutation, preventive mastectomy, oophorectomy, the ovaries removed, and she also did not have reconstruction. And so I was talking with her and asking about her experiences and why she didn't do it, and they were very similar to what I was thinking. I was also familiar with an awesome comedian and actor named Tig Notaro, who I had been following for a while, and I was just obsessed with her. I was watching everything that she produced, all of her comedy that I could find on YouTube. She made a documentary called, I can't remember what it's called, but Tig maybe, and a series called One Mississippi. I watched everything. And the reason I was obsessed with her is because she had a tragic year, and including breast cancer. And during that time, she had a double mastectomy and did not have reconstruction, and seemed to be pretty comfortable in her own skin. And with having made that decision, and I was really looking at her as a role model. Also during that time, my mother-in-law told me about a front page article in the New York Times that came out in October 2016 called Going Flat, front page of the New York Times. It was almost like it was written for me. It had pictures of women who had mastectomies and did not have reconstruction for a variety of reasons, either because they had some of the same concerns as I had, or because they couldn't have it because of radiation. And as I found out, something I never thought about before, but almost, depending on the source, about 50% of women who have mastectomies don't have reconstruction. I had no idea. You would never know it because you don't see women walking around without breasts. Obviously, they wear what I've come to think of as, I've come to learn the term boobs, like fake boobs. So a lot of women who go through this are kind of doing it in isolation or in silence. There's not a lot of visibility to it. So the New York Times article had a story about that, and also had photos of women without their shirts on the front cover. And many of them had really beautiful tattoos. And so I looked at that and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a tattoo. Once my scars heal, I'm planning to have tattoos on my chest. And so that gave me a little bit of inspiration. That was actually that was a good consolation. So as part of all of this, and as part of leading up to this big surgery, to distract me, to kind of confirm my decision not to have reconstruction, and to celebrate the fact that, I had these breasts for all of my adult life. They fed 2 babies. I felt like that needed to be celebrated. So I was preparing for my party, and I was teaching for the last week. I taught, one of my classes was an intro sociology class, and it was a group of first-year students. I had 17 students, and it was one of those really amazing, awesome classes that I really appreciated. I loved the students, and I felt like I really bonded with them. And the last week of class, they were presenting their digital stories that they made. about their own identities. And they were stories, some of them were really touching and really vulnerable stories about a couple cases of sexual abuse, of parents abusing, about, one guy who had major anger problems in high school and had a lot of personal issues and was transforming himself and his life. Picture stories about students who were really introverted. And I saw these 18 and 19-year-olds get up and give these really touching, very personal stories about themselves. And so I hadn't told my students about my mastectomy and what was going on with me, but I had to tell them that I wasn't going to be there the next week because I was having my surgery. And I had said, at the beginning, I'm just having the surgery. And I was like, I'm just going to tell them what it is. So I'm standing there in front of my students. They're all in this, kind of U shape. And they're all looking at me, and the room is really quiet. And I'm explaining to them what's going on. And I even started to cry a little bit. And I'm looking at them, and the room is really still. And I started to feel a little sorry for them. Like I'm laying this heavy thing on these young people. And so I said, but don't worry, I'm having a going away party for my boobs, And I was explaining the party, and one of them said, can we come? And I said, do you really want to come? You really want to come to the middle-aged woman's going away party for her boobs? And they were like, yeah, we really want to come. And I said, sure, yeah, you can come. And so I invited the whole class, come if you want to. And then the next morning, I woke up with what Brene Brown calls a vulnerability hangover. I thought, oh my God, first of all, I can't believe I'm having this party to celebrate the life of my boobs. And secondly, I can't believe I just invited my whole class to come. So I thought, well, they're probably not going to come anyway. But I also imagined, them telling their parents, and their parents like, oh my God, what's going on in Madison? You've got, a lot of bizarre people who are celebrating kind of weird things. So in the end, the party happened. It was on a Saturday night. The surgery was to happen on Monday. I had 5 of my students show up. I had a bunch of coworkers and friends, and the students all sat in the dining room. I have a dining room and a living room and a kitchen that are all kind of connected. And they immediately found space at the dining room table. And they were working on tattoo ideas because we've been talking about tattoos. So they spent most of the night at that table drawing tattoos, and a couple of them wrote me really nice letters and poems that they left with me. And they also put together, I got a picture of this, a poster that is titled Perks of a Boobless Life. And so the first one is eye contact. Boobless equals braless. No more bras. Jump on a trampoline in comfort. No more mammograms. You can hug as hard as you want without any awkwardness. So this ended up, I took a copy of this with me to the hospital when I had my surgery, and I had it hanging up in my room. Because it was a reminder that, I wasn't alone. Like, this was something that I made into a community event. And I even invited my young students who didn't think it was weird, who were giving me tattoo ideas. It really helped normalize this whole bizarre, surreal process I was going through. My 16-year-old daughter, Maya, was there with a couple of her friends. And I asked Maya, as we were planning the party, if she would make a cake and shaped like a boob, a couple of boobs, kind of modeled after this. This is the invitation that I sent out. So kind of modeled after that. And she said, but Mom, your breasts are so small, maybe they should be cupcakes. So in the end, they made about 50 cupcakes, and they were multicultural. They were not all white frosting, but there were some various shades of brown and black, and there were chocolate, there was vanilla, and different color nipples, different sizes. And so during the party, they were going around passing out the cupcakes to people. And at some point, it turned into photo shoots of people holding the cupcakes in front of their breasts, men and women and children. Even my dog, Bear, ended up with a couple of cupcakes. So it was fun. There was a lot of laughing. There was, interspersed talking about serious things like cancer and mastectomies and risk and life and all of that, and just normal conversations about final exams and children and pets, and it was mostly fun. And then towards the end of the party, one of my friends, Mary Elizabeth, brought a poem by Mary Oliver, and my friend John, the same one who said I shouldn't work my ass off, read the poem. And everybody was kind of standing around me and offering me best wishes for my surgery and a speedy recovery, and people promising to bring food and visit me. And it just felt like I was, I wasn't going through this scary thing all by myself. So, and Mary Elizabeth also brought me this bowl that she gave me as a gift, and she had left some rocks out for people who could come over on their own and hold the rock and give me their best wishes, their prayers for my healing, and then took the rocks and put them in the bowl and left them with me. So I had this really nice thing to look at while I was in my recovery. So the whole thing, the last year of my life has been kind of surreal. The idea that I've got this mutation that I can't even see, and I don't have cancer, but I chose to have all these body parts removed. It was kind of a surreal experience. But I also realized that, through this process, that there's no roadmap that you have for dealing with tragedy like this and difficult times. And especially like this, where people don't talk about mastectomies. They don't talk about risks of cancer in most of their daily life. And it felt really like a really good decision to make this public. And it felt like a really great decision to have this party. The party for me it helped a lot in celebrating the life, the time that my breasts had on this earth, and also helping me not to feel so isolated. It felt like a kind of a ritual of blessings, but also celebration. And it made it easier for me to go through this surgery, which was really, in the end, not as big of a deal as I expected it to be. And also just to give a little bit of levity to what had seemed like such a dire diagnosis. So at a time like today, where it seems like we might be taking some steps backwards in terms of women's rights and women's level of comfort talking about their experiences and their bodies in particular, that having my story out there and giving other people the permission to talk about your experiences and your bodies and what's happening to you feels really important right now. And so I hope that you learn something from my story and that you share some of the universal experiences that we all have in life, which is that we're vulnerable, and that you enjoyed reading my story.